they said, it's time. We need to close this church, but it's not the end of the story, right? Because it really is the belief in a resurrection story. The God of resurrection who loves to take the things that we surrender and do something new.
Welcome to Jesus in the Upper Left, where we're talking about gospel multiplication in the Pacific Northwest. Hello, everybody. My name is Gabe Kolstad from Westside Community Church, and I'm excited to have my new friend Erin Taylor in the studio with me today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. I've been so excited to talk to you about what is going on because it's very unique what you're doing, and it feels like one of those things that we look around and we go, look what God is doing, and these bright lights are popping up. And I do feel like this is one of them. So I can't wait to pull out your story for all of our listeners to be able to hear and be excited about what's going on. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yes, absolutely. I'm married to Dan, and he is a 5th grade teacher in Beaverton.
All right.
Brilliant with that. One of his students last year wrote a letter about his impact, and she said, every kid deserves to have a Mr. Taylor in their lives. I know, isn't that the best?
That's a big one.
Yeah, and I agree.
Cool.
He's amazing at it. So he's a teacher. We have 4 kids. Our oldest is 13, and then 12, and 8.
Okay.
And adoption is part of our family story.
Okay.
And we love that. And that's how a couple of our kids are not actually twins, but the same age.
Really?
Yes, that's a whole nother story
That's
for
so
a whole
unique.
nother day. But we love
that.
how the Lord knit us together as a family.
Yeah. Okay. And you're living in...
We're in Hillsboro. Yes,
yeah.
We just moved here about 8 months ago, this last summer. So we still feel like total beginners in the area, just getting to know the area, the people, diving in, all of that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, and I mean, I know that Hillsboro as a city and part of the Portland metro area has been growing really fast. So
Yes.
You're probably noticing I would imagine you're noticing a lot of things that are new and happening. So we'll talk more about that.
Absolutely.
But I'd love to hear about your current ministry role and what led you and your family to this new expression that I'm very excited about.
Yes, absolutely. So, before we were here, we were out in the Midwest, mostly in Michigan and Indiana. I was a lead pastor in Michigan.
Okay.
And I heard about what was happening in Hillsboro, this opportunity, and it just grabbed our hearts. Really, the Lord, only God, right, can write stories like this. But there is a church in Hillsboro that was planted back in the 1980s. And these last few years has been declining to the point of closure. And so they have entered into this process called dying to restart.
Okay.
Very courageous and faith-filled.
Love that language.
Isn't that
dying
so
to
good?
restart. Yeah.
Yes, dying to restart. That's a friend of mine who pastors out in D.C. His name's Dan Turner. And he's helped to develop this pathway.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful thing and a very courageous thing for a church that knows it's dying to have the courage to say, we're going to close. And that's what they did. Is they said, it's time. We need to close this church, but it's not the end of the story.
Yeah.
Right? Because it really is the belief in a resurrection story. The God of resurrection who loves to take the things that we surrender and do something new. And so what happened as they made that decision to go into a full closure, there was a restart board that was kind of put in place of some other regional pastors and leaders. We're part of the Church of God movement.
Okay.
Church of God Anderson. And so some of these regional leaders came alongside to really begin to solidify all the resources of this congregation that has closed for a church plant. And so it was some conversations with some of those folks who are friends of mine. And I have some connections and roots out here in the Pacific Northwest. And we began talking with them, learning about this, praying about it. And it just captured our hearts.
Yeah.
And we just thought, this is really incredible. There's so much possibility. There's so much courage that came before. And we really believe that God's going to do something new. Out of that place, birth something new. So...
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I mean, I think it takes so much foresight, I think, and unselfishness and vision
Yes.
for a group of people to go, hey, we see something that could be a possibility that would be.
Yes.
And then they have the ability to impact it. That's really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
It really is. I think it's a beautiful thing and a much needed model because we all know there's churches declining and facing closure everywhere we look.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this idea of thinking about how we go about that. And I think it is unique because it's not a church revitalization approach, but it's actually a closure and then a fresh start. And I think there's something that's really special, and that does provide a different energy, with a new thing that's starting.
Oh, for sure. And clarity, too.
Yes,
I think that
absolutely.
is super important, really, in the health of an organization. So that's amazing. But it does kind of feel like a gift to the body of Christ that there's people thinking like this that could pioneer a new, even new language is so great, but a new approach to what we all know, as you mentioned, is definitely, you could look at it as a problem in the country of churches nearing the end of their life cycle, or maybe they've gotten there to the end of their life cycle and kind of asking what's next. But the more this happens, I think the more that churches are feeling that or sensing that or into that space could start going, oh, we know what's next.
Yes.
And it's good.
Yes.
Right? So that's pretty cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Wondering, okay, I forgot to mention that one thing that was funny and fun was that you came to our church recently, and I realized, you said, hey, do you remember when I was here for the church, Planters Assessment Center that we hosted as a church? And this is, how long ago was that?
That was 2018.
Okay, so it's been 7 years ago.
Right.
And then the Lord's been doing all this stuff, and now you're back in this area. So what a treat to have another friend jumping into the team. I always think of like the team here in the Portland, Oregon area. So what's the adjustment been like in moving to the Portland area? And I'd love to know a couple things like what's the adjustment? What's your favorite thing? Do you believe in Bigfoot? What's your favorite pizza place?
Absolutely. Huge adjustment. Yeah. And it's so beautiful. I'm wondering, do you ever get used to Mount Hood? Turning the corner and just, like I just hear myself gasping. It's so beautiful.
It is.
My mom grew up in Portland, so I've visited here a lot. Have a lot of fondness in this area, but it's definitely different living here. Yeah. And a huge adjustment, culturally for our family too. This is definitely different than the Midwest vibe that we've had before. And so,
what's different? I'm just curious what you noticed the most.
Well, what's interesting, like part of it too is we were in a very small town in the Midwest. So it's not just the Midwest and then Pacific Northwest, but it's the small town, bigger metro area that also feels so different to us. So probably the biggest thing is the food.
Lots of good food.
We are loving that.
Yeah.
A lot of food trucks, and that's not easy on the wallet.
Oh my goodness, especially right now.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, stuff has gotten really expensive, hasn't it?
It really has. Yeah. But just so fun to see the life and energy around the city, the area. I think for us too, we're really walking in just eyes wide open, feeling like we don't know what we don't know, right? And just trying to come in as students and trying to exegete the community, the culture, the spiritual climate here, which is definitely different, as well. So,
I mean, that's so good. We're hearing that more and more, honestly, from planters or people, even just people going, I'm on mission here, but coming with that attitude of learning. And I mean, I think no matter where in the world God sends somebody, that should always be our first approach, right? Basically take that missionary approach.
Right.
But I think you've done a really good job, and I'm even hearing about all the people that you've been meeting and being very proactive about asking questions, being in different communities, meeting different leaders. What we're noticing at Multiply PDX is the more somebody will do that on the front end, the healthier their long-term ministry is, because they've got a support network.
Yes.
They maybe heard about, they were able to say no to something before they tried it because they realized maybe that wasn't the right thing. Right. And so, just getting a lot of information on the front end, I think is a great deal, and building those relationships.
Yes. Yeah. That's been a real joy to do that. And, I'll tell you, as we were praying about this, we just had this sense that God was really up to something and moving. We just sensed it. We saw it. And my goodness, like what we saw before we moved here was, I felt like just the surface of it. And now that we're here, I didn't know about Multiply PDX. I didn't know about some of these networks of leaders and, things that were happening. And it's just like, wow. I mean, God really is on the move here. And we're really excited about this idea of just joining in, linking arms, and, how do we do this together?
Yeah. And I think, it's exciting for me to hear you say God is on the move here. I agree. And I just got an email yesterday from somebody going, hey, did you see the latest stat about Portland, and it was like, oh man. So I opened it up, and it was basically saying the thing that we all know, that Portland is, the most non-religious people of any major metro area in the country. By percentage, and so it's neck and neck with Seattle on one thing, but one worse stat than Seattle on another. So you look at it and go, yeah, God is doing an amazing thing, but maybe that's one reason why a lot of creative things are happening here is because it's not like you just put your sign out for your church and all of a sudden it's just going to blow up, and people are just going to show up.
Right.
That's not going to happen. So what we have to do is think more deeply about what's the community like. And that's one question I have for you is, what have you noticed about the specific geography that you're currently called to in Hillsborough?
Yes.
What needs do you see?
Yes.
What opportunities do you see?
Yes. I talked with someone, a young 20-something guy, early on when we first got here, and I said, tell me about Hillsborough and the community, and I'll never forget what he said. I think he was living prior more in the heart of the city of Portland, moved out to Hillsborough, and he said, I think Hillsborough is where people go to isolate.
Interesting.
I thought it was really interesting. And, I've been watching just for what connection looks like with people, trying to, I really see loneliness.
Yeah.
People that are polite with one another, friendly with one another, but don't have that sense of community and belonging. I also, I'm really leaning in to notice what kind of spiritual curiosity is present, and thinking about how do we engage that? How do we help people encounter Jesus in the midst of their curiosity, to try and think about spirituality, and there's a different kind of openness that we're seeing here in this region, which feels different than other places I've served that have sort of this undertone of a Christian subculture there that isn't here. But yet that curiosity piece is what I'm really trying to lean into right now.
That's great. I mean, how else besides curiosity would you describe what you're noticing about the openness here?
I think I've sensed that that there's almost a kindness to people. I don't know, coming in new, I don't want to be the person with rose-colored glasses, right? I have a lot to learn, but in the midst of that, the ability to connect with people, I just sense that hunger, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I do agree that there is, I think, also a kindness, and maybe an appreciation for people's humanness that is, people are acknowledging that you're also human. Right. And there's some,
absolutely,
I don't know, almost common grace it feels like given in that, which is pretty cool. I think it's less judgmental than you might, I feel, than you might run into in another part of the country. But it's pretty fun to experiment with those things in ministry, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with. But I want to hear a little bit about what you're doing that's so unique with the church that's springing up in Hillsborough and the process specifically that God has led you to.
Yes, absolutely. So the blessing that we have as we come in to do this church plant is that we have a church building because we have a church that has closed. And so we're in this process now of managing things on a lot of different fronts. So it's I find it to be a really interesting work to do, and there's always something new that needs attention. So we have a building, but because there's a church that has closed, as you can imagine, a lot of deferred maintenance. Yeah. So there's a lot of help that the building needs. So we have things that we're trying to do there. We have a couple of tenants renting the facility, and so we're working on that whole side. There's a fundraising side, of course, to church planting that I'm actively working on all the time. And then just building our team on the ground. And that's been a joy, and also I use the phrase a lot, I'm excitedly terrified because that is so often how I feel as we're getting going in this process. But it's that, finding our launch team, building our launch team, dreaming with people, exegeting the community, discerning, God, what are you up to here? And what are you asking for? What is this expression of the kingdom going to look like here? When
you think about what it's going to look like, when things open up, call it launch. Is that what you're calling it? Okay, when you launch, have you thought about, has God shown you guys what it some of the first steps are going to look like? Like, what's it going to be?
Yeah, that is a great question.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Okay.
all of that. And I'll tell you, that is one of the hardest things for me right now. But I really feel like what the Lord has asked of me is to not rush ahead to have all of that outlined and figured out. And my goodness, that's really hard because that goes against the kind of way I'm wired as a leader.
I was going to say, you seem like a planner maybe. Yeah.
I am. Yes. I mean, I really like to work ahead and, move through the steps and have all of those things, working ahead. But I really feel like there's this dependence on the leading of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Lord's invited me to say, just watch what is beginning to emerge. And so I have so many dreams and ideas, things that I'm curious about, notebooks filling up with ideas, and also believing that there will be specific people that God will call and invite and, who will be a part of this. And some of the shape that it takes will be them, and their gifts and their passions. Somebody was asking me the other day about my plans for coffee, which I know are that's very
so
important here.
Come on, Erin.
It really is. But I found myself saying, well, I don't know. I don't know at what scale we'll do that. It depends on who the Lord provides, for that. But certainly the gathering for worship, the proclaiming of the word, and just very focused on our community, serving people, connecting with them where they are, and really curious about how we use our facility, which is in a very central part of the city, just to serve, to meet people where they are.
What is the facility like?
So we have a good-sized sanctuary, seats about 200 people.
Wow.
In the middle of it.
Which is big here, basically, right?
Yes, yeah. And I think there's great opportunity there for some multi-use space that we can develop there. We have a small section of offices, and then we have 6 classrooms plus a nursery.
Wow.
So there's some great space to work with there, and we're sitting on 3.5 acres.
Oh, fantastic.
And a purple dinosaur.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned this like in passing, and I want to make sure that everybody got to hear about the purple dinosaur. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so if you know Hillsborough, we are on Main Street. I often will say to people, we're by the big concrete arch bridge of the Max line.
Okay.
But then people will lean in and they'll say, wait, are you the Purple Dinosaur Church?
Oh
this
my gosh.
happens all the time.
So you're going to keep the purple dinosaur?
Well, I think we have to. It is a landmark.
Yeah.
It's really not that big, but it's noticeable.
That's funny.
It is. And but it's actually really fun that it's become a point of conversation. In fact, I'm working on filming a series of videos, just kind of a vlog of our experience and trying to introduce ourselves and what we're doing to the community. And working on telling the story of the purple dinosaur, which at the moment is in disrepair. We have a daycare there. They can't even use the purple dinosaur because it's kind of a mess right now. So, but that really kind of
becomes... So the community is going to come together and restore the purple dinosaur.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
What a great story, and there's some gospel opportunity there, right?
Absolutely.
Of the restoration of Christ's work in our lives, and so.
Yeah.
But what an easy way just to have conversation with people, find a point of connection and visibility. So we're having some fun with that too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to us about some of the challenges that you've been facing, either with the process or the community or your own selves, or what challenges have you been facing? Because I know anyone listening to this kind of a podcast is going to resonate with whatever they are.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of challenges. Which one do I mention first? Logistically, the challenge of managing the building and trying to figure out, all of the work that needs to be done. I don't have experience in that, so that's outside my wheelhouse. I'm learning about furnaces and water main lines and, just all kinds of things that come, with a building like that. And the fundraising piece of it. We're grateful for some initial funds from, the Church of God that have helped us get started, but a lot more funding that's been needed. And so I've been learning a ton about that. And I'd also say, my goodness, seeing the Lord's provision has been amazing. I'm so excited about that. We have so many individuals and other churches that are giving to help us with this work.
Even local, like now.
Yes,
you just got here when?
We just got here in July.
Yeah.
So, for example, Vancouver Church,
Yeah.
another Church of God congregation, about 45 minutes north of us, they are a huge partner for us. This last Saturday, they sent a group of 50 guys to come and blitz the facility. We had a punch list, we had clean out, we had landscaping. I mean, they were just working
So
everywhere.
good.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still just like floating after that experience, and just, it felt like the reminder of, what God calls us to, He will provide.
Yeah. Yep.
And just getting to see that, and I think the joy that I'm seeing in them too is really fun, because it gives them this ability to be a part of something new.
Yep.
And they're a very established, long time church. I think they're right about 100 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so for them to be a part of the newness of a startup, it's just a really cool kingdom partnership, in that.
It is. And I mean, I think I already said this, but you're doing a great job of connecting. And, that's really the only way you're going to find out who's out there to jump on. But it sounds like you're pleasantly surprised with how much openness there has been, and even just people going like, hey, we'd like to help you out in some way. Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty cool. And I think
That's
part of it
amazing.
is you guys were listening to the Lord as He was pulling you here, but it wasn't just Him moving you, it was Him moving all kinds of people's hearts, right? And there's something very special that's happening here right now that we're all sort of pausing. I actually just got a text today from Kevin Palau about these stories that churches are telling about miracles that God is doing, like real miracles. And we're looking around going, yeah, I think there is something really unique, and part of it might just be that He brought you guys here at the exact right time, to the exact right place, with the exact right group of people, and it's go time, and so He's ready. He's prepared it, which is so cool. And I think for anybody that's out there listening, who's asking that question, should I, put my foot in the water?
Right.
What advice would you say?
Yes. Have the courage to step out in faith.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than, I talk about it as bold prayers. For me, it's that intersection of being fully engaged. I'm giving all that I have. I'm all in. And dependence on the Lord, fully dependent. God, if you don't show up, there's no way. This is, my all is not enough for this. This has to be your hand. And just the way, when you step out in faith like that, and sometimes it's a big move or, something like that, but sometimes it's the smaller things, walking across the room or picking up the phone or, it's not always these giant moves, but when we do, have the courage to follow the Lord's leading in that, there's nothing better. And the way that we encounter Him in the midst of that, there's a lot of joy in it. There really is.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. I would love to know a little bit about when you think about what you hope, kind of like maybe zoom out for a little bit and go, okay, 5 years down the road, here's a couple things I hope. I know you don't want to project like what God's going to do, but what's in your heart when you think about, God shows up in power and works through this ministry? What are some of the things you hope for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, people just encountering Jesus. I think of people who haven't met Him yet. I think about there's a baptistry. It's probably been a little while since that's been used in the church building, and I'm praying, Lord, I just pray there are so many people and families and lives and neighborhoods that are transformed. So that's at the core of the whole thing for me, of course. And I'm just excited to see what kind of ripples will come out of that too. I think about how I'm very excited about not only what we get to do here in Hillsborough, but also working on developing pathways to do this in other settings as well. And I don't know exactly what that can look like, but as I said, we know there's churches dying or closing all over the place. And so how do we mobilize those for kingdom purposes?
Yeah.
How do we think creatively? How do we engage our imaginations with that? And so I'm excited about what we can do here and how perhaps we can help others, whether we link arms with them or help create pathways for that. So I'm excited about that. And I'll say too, I also hope that for women in church planting, that I can help encourage and rally some other women.
Yeah.
I know in my own story how powerful it is to see yourself in others, and when
Sure.
I've seen other women leading, that's a huge part of my own call to ministry is I've seen other women who have led strong. And so I pray there will be more and more women in church planting as well.
There will.
Yeah,
that's great.
Praying for that.
Well, tell us a little bit about like who did you see and how did that impact you when you were looking at, is this even possible for me? And you saw women leading. What was that like? Who was it for you?
Right. I remember when I was in college, first feeling a call to ministry, and I really only knew 2 or 3 women. And then I was invited in college to be a part of this task force for women in ministry in the Church of God. And we had this meeting down in Florida. And I remember walking in, I felt so out of place. Like, why am I here as this young college student? And I remember walking into that room. It was this conference room. And there were probably 20 women who were pastors all over the country, all kinds of different roles and everything. And I just felt that the Holy Spirit just invite imagination, just kind of explode in my heart. And I began just to see different kinds of gifting and models and modes and, people who served in different kinds of settings, and just began to see, wow, what might God want to do through my life?
Yeah.
And so I love that. I love seeing the beauty in the body of Christ of men and women working together. There's so much good and so much beauty there, and our daughters and our sons need to see it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, if you could share what you think the church in the Portland metro area can do to encourage that, what would you say? To encourage more women to step into a ministry role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for our brothers in ministry, whenever you can find times to lift up women in ministry, just give them opportunity, to lead on the platform, to preach, to lead different ministries. That matters. It really does. And sometimes for some women, they haven't seen themselves in that kind of a role because they haven't had an opportunity to witness other women in it. And so even just the ability, it's true for women and men alike, but whenever we can come alongside someone and say, I see something in you, and call that out and invite opportunity for that, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we are certainly excited about what God's doing through you and your family. We look forward to working alongside of you. You're geographically not far from our church, and so it's fun to have another friend in the community doing the same work, and I guess I know that there's going to be people that want to know how they can get in touch with you.
Yes.
So can you share that with our listeners?
Absolutely. So we have a website that sort of told the story of our call here. It's called seedsofhope.me.
Oh,
seedsofhope.me.
All right.
So that's the best place, and I've got contact information there so people can stay in touch. And I would love that. I'll tell you, I have really, one of the things that I have felt God inviting me to pray is to pray for people that I believe God is calling and equipping to be a part of this work that I haven't met yet.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so that's an active part of my prayer life right now. I'm eyes wide open, and who knows, maybe someone is listening today and God is calling them to help us be a part of this, to discover what God's doing in their own life and to join us in this environment. So reach out. I'd love to hear,
Awesome.
from anybody who wants to jump in with us.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Jesus in the Upper Left. We want to ask you a quick favor. Would you please subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, and share with those that are in your life that might benefit from the content. Hit the notifications button, rate and review, of course, and then head on over to upperleftshow.com where you can find bonus content, opportunities to connect with those around the city that are doing similar work as you, resources to help you, and just a way to connect to the community. We hope to see you again next time.